Thank you for joining us on Crossroads Politics here on WTHR+. I'm Emily Longnecker.
I'm Dustin Grove. Let's start with the Chicago Bears. The latest on that. You know, they've taken another step toward moving it to Indiana. That news came late last week, that the team's board of directors had voted to move forward with a new stadium location somewhere in Hammond.
That move came after Illinois lawmakers failed to pass their own bill incentivizing a stadium project in that state. Indiana lawmakers were quick to declare victory, including Indiana House Speaker Todd Huston.
It's exciting for our state. I think, the Bears choosing Indiana just shows all the tremendous things we have going on here, and it's been a fun thing to be a part of. And I'm so excited for all the people in Northwest Indiana. They've been tremendous partners in this, and it's going to be a transformative thing for our state.
House Minority Leader Phil Giaquinta issued a statement saying in part, quote, "A development of this scale means good paying jobs and major new investment for Hammond and all of Northwest Indiana."
A game changer, to be sure, and perhaps no one seemed happier than Governor Mike Braun, who has been one of this plan's biggest supporters.
Yeah, I sat down with him last Saturday for an exclusive conversation about the progress and what is still yet to be determined. What would you say to Hoosiers who are excited about this announcement, about the possibility of the Bears coming here, but they want to know exactly what's in it for them?
Well, what should be in it for them is ask how many people that live in Indianapolis if they'd rather not have the Colts here. That's a rhetorical question. We know the answer. Having two iconic franchises in this state, especially this one, in the area that probably needs the most help for what I talked about earlier, what Gary, Hammond, that whole area has gone through. I don't think we can have a more wonderful thing that has happened to take that one spot in our state, which is, it's got the second largest concentration of population. It is a place that is, it's a win-win. I think we're just lucky that we're where we're at.
I know you've said you've been talking with the team twice a week up until now. When will you be talking with the team again, and what is that conversation about?
We'll be talking to them twice again this coming week, and it's about the shrinking list of things that we need to get done to actually get the shovel in the ground.
So if you're a betting man, do the Chicago Bears end up in Hammond, Indiana?
So I think when I started, I called it 50-50. And maybe 3 weeks ago, I said 65-35. And the odds are with us now. And unless something would come out of the blue, which, like I told you earlier, we will deal with, most of the heavy lifting, I think, is behind us.
What's your response to folks, the people that, Prosperity Indiana critiqued this, people who say the money could be better spent on roads, schools, other local priorities?
So you're not going to, number one, I mentioned it earlier, there's not a state in better shape to be able to address early childhood learning, pre-K, stuff we need to do better at, public health, infrastructure. And this state government was run better than most other state governments, but all came through COVID off the wagon. Needed to get back running things, not based upon all that federal largesse that was borrowed and spent. A lot of local governments, school districts got used to that. I ask all our agencies to start running themselves more efficiently. We're getting a dividend, I can't stress this more than anything else, in just a year and a half that's going to be on running government more efficiently, maybe close to $1 billion a year. And when I reorganized Indiana Economic Development Corporation, we are now, in just a year and a half, growing faster, where we were closer to our peer group states, twice as fast as Illinois and Ohio, 3 times as fast as Kentucky, 6 times as fast as Michigan. And we got a lot of good things going on. I expect those to even get better. That's going to enable us to invest in a lot of different parts that we need to do better at. And we're already considered one of the best states in the country from everything that we're talking about.
Can you guarantee that Hoosiers won't be left holding the bag if the revenue doesn't materialize the way we think it's going to?
So then you do like you do in any business. You adjust and you find out ways to take whatever you have to work with, and just don't assume that there's not things you can do. And it's always going to be like it is in the real world. You've got 49 other competitors in terms of how states run, and some are going to do better than others. And my point all along, from the time I got involved in government, in politics, take the things that work in the real world, realize it is different, government from business, but the places that are being run, I think with the concept, and then with the sensitivity of knowing that there's a difference between the two, those are the states that are working best, where people are moving to because they're voting with their feet. Indiana is the only state in the northern half of the country that people are moving into, net migration in. You mostly hear that with Florida, Texas, and now Tennessee. And they have a lot of other attributes, weather, coastlines. We're getting it because it's a great place to raise a family, especially start a business that's reasonable when it comes to how the government treats its own people.
All right, so the governor, state leaders, they've rolled out the red carpet, said welcome to Indiana, but it's technically not a done deal yet.
Yeah, no, it's not. This week I spoke with the mayor of Hammond, Tom McDermott. He is, as you might expect, very excited about the developments. And while he's a Democrat and Braun is a Republican, both men had nothing but praise for one another, something McDermott thinks helped.
I think that's been a refreshing change for the Bears to see bipartisanship in Indiana and two different parties working together in a common goal to make something great happen for Indiana.
Okay, is there anything Illinois can do at this point to keep the Bears?
Yeah, and they're doing it. It looks like Illinois isn't going down without a fight. At least one Republican Illinois lawmaker announced he'll be introducing legislation next week to try and keep the team there, but McDermott thinks that they're running out of time.
If Illinois is going to do anything, they probably can't do anything until they go back into session in November. And I don't think the Bears are on the same timeline.
All right, so clearly some questions about timing. I want to bring in Capitol Chronicle editor Nikki Kelly. Thank you for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Seems like the momentum really is with Indiana on this.
Absolutely, and it's a huge step forward, but I do think people need to be cautious. They haven't even picked an exact location.
Mm-hmm.
They're still looking at land. There's still environmental studies that need to be done. None of the tax increases that would need to support this program have been passed up in Northwest Indiana yet. So while it's a great step forward, definitely not a done deal.
When I talked to Mayor McDermott this past week, he said that the team was looking at a couple different sites, at least he said, in Hammond, but he wouldn't elaborate on which ones. One issue that has come up also is that the Bears technically are leasing Soldier Field, and there have been some rumblings that Indiana might help the Bears get out of that lease, pay out of that lease. House Speaker Todd Huston said that that's not on the table. Are you hearing anything different?
Yeah, no, I mean, the Bears have always said they're going to contribute money to this. So the amounts I've heard are pretty large. So I think breaking a lease is not going to be the linchpin on this project. That's probably the smaller amount. I think they put the amount of pressure they wanted now back on Illinois. I mean, there's no denying they already own the land in Arlington Heights. It makes more sense for them all around. I know Governor J.B. Pritzker said earlier this week that if it looked like there was a deal, he'd be happy to call a special session. So, we're still seeing how it goes.
In terms of buying out that lease, when I talked to the governor, I asked him that question. He said he wasn't making any commitments yet, but he would be bargaining in good faith and that Indiana would do what made sense. So kind of had a little different tone than House Speaker Huston, who said, no, that's not on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the cost to buy out that lease is small compared to all the other costs we're talking about for, the billions that will be spent to actually build the stadium, the infrastructure around it. So, that to me is the smallest part of the project.
How will this project impact Indiana's finances? I mean, is Indiana basically being asked to co-sign a loan here or not?
Basically, yeah. I mean, we're putting our credit behind this, and there are some tax increases, whether it be an admissions tax, food and beverage tax increases that are supposed to use to pay those bonds off. But if anything would happen with those, it's Indiana's, AAA rating that is going up with those bonds. So just like we did with Lucas Oil. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not really sure how exactly Indiana will prosper from it, because a lot of any new income or sales taxes would be put back into that district. That's part of the whole Stadium Authority district. But they'd probably see some new income taxes from the players because when you play a game, I don't think people know this, but when players go to another place to play, they have to pay that state's income taxes for that game check. So, it's so another 8 games worth of some income there maybe.
Okay, we'll be watching closely.
Yep.
We should have an answer here pretty soon.
Yeah.
We've got much more Crossroads Politics to come. When you share the road with big rigs, making sure those trucks are safe, of course, it's critical.
13 investigates what's behind a steep drop in that oversight here in Indiana.
And how it could be leaving Hoosier drivers at risk.
More competition, just on principle, more competition in our politics is a good thing.
Bayh steps forward as the Democratic nominee for Indiana Secretary of State.
What he's planning now that he's secured the nomination. It's next on Crossroads Politics. Welcome back. Last weekend, Indiana Democrats picked their nominee for Secretary of State. It
was the biggest race at the convention and is certainly the biggest statewide race this year. Bayh walked out of the convention triumphant with the support of about 60% of the delegates on the first ballot. His opponent, Bayh Potter, took home 40% of the vote.
Potter's support came from more left-leaning Democrats who were skeptical and have been skeptical of the Bayh family's reputation for centrism. But in the end, Bayh won by a healthy margin.
Yeah, he took Sunday off to celebrate his victory. Then on Monday, it was back to work, sitting down with me to discuss what comes next. On day one on the campaign trail as the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State, Bayh says he's thankful.
I allowed myself about 24 hours off yesterday, and we're back on the campaign trail hard today. So just very thankful for their support and hopeful for some change and progress in our state.
Bayh's talking about the 60% of delegates who chose him Saturday as the nominee over Bayh Potter.
Bayh, 1,385 votes.
Now the attorney and United States Marine sets his sights on defeating whoever Republicans nominate at their convention in less than 2 weeks. Incumbent Secretary of State Diego Morales enters the convention facing questions over controversies that have dogged his tenure, with some prominent Republicans urging him to step aside. Bayh says no matter who Republicans choose, Morales or one of his 3 challengers, his message will be the same for Hoosiers heading into the November election.
This office, which has been infested with corruption, insider dealing, and waste, needs to be changed. And so that's why my first priority when we win this election, hopefully in November, will be to open an independent audit of the office to rein in the corruption and the insider dealing. Regardless of what political party you come from, we cannot tolerate that in our state government.
All right, let's bring Nikki back in here. So Bayh was always kind of seen as the favorite in this, but he's not going to win with 60% of the Democratic vote. So he's still got some work to do.
Of course, and it really all comes down to who the Republicans pick as their nominee. If they do move away from incumbent Secretary of State Diego Morales, I think that really impacts the whole campaign and tone that Bayh would have used, which would have focused on corruption and integrity. And if Republicans take that away, he'll have to kind of revamp his message.
I was going to ask, no matter who comes out of that convention next week, the Republican convention, a winner, does Bayh said that he is going to have the same strategy no matter what. Do you buy that?
I mean, look, you can point out the problems in the office, but it carries less weight if the nominee isn't the person who made those problems, right? And so he's going to have to widen it a little, I think, to get people from the Republican side or even to win over Bayh Potter supporters.
Well, one big advantage he's had is in fundraising.
Yeah.
Do you expect that to continue? Do you expect that advantage to narrow as we head toward the general?
Oh, I think in the end, the money will be there for whoever the Republican nominee is. This is the top, race of the season, of the year, and they don't want to give up this streak of not having a Democrat have a statewide office. So Republicans are going to make sure their nominee has all the money that person needs to move forward.
Another wild card in this race are the third-party candidates, right? Lori Schilling with the Libertarians will be on the ballot in November, and then there's former Republican Mayor Greg Ballard running on the Lincoln Party ticket. This week, his campaign told me that they are very close to the signatures they need to get on the ballot in November. Ballard put out a statement about Bayh's win and echoed criticism he faced by Potter. That statement saying in part, quote, "Now that he's officially the Democratic Party's nominee, we look forward to Bayh bravely using the word Democrat on his website and in the bio of his social media accounts where it has yet to appear." So, Nikki, in an election cycle that has Democrats polling really well, do you expect Bayh to embrace his party more, to say it more?
Yeah, and I mean, I find that to be an interesting statement from a Republican who is now running as an independent. Maybe that's not the exact, angle you want to take on that, because he's not saying he's a Republican right now either. So I think in the end, it's all about trying to, I guess, be attractive to all voters. I mean, I don't think anyone doesn't know that Bayh is a Democrat,
So those third-party candidates, in the end, who do they draw the votes away from, in your opinion? Because I've heard both sides. I've heard them say it could.
And that's the thing. When you talk to different sides, they both think he can pull from both sides. I think that the people who should be most worried are the libertarians, because if he pulls a bunch for libertarians, they could lose their ballot access. They have to get a certain percentage of the vote to maintain automatic ballot access. And if he's able to get on the ballot, which we still don't know, and pulls from them, then they could have to start all over again from that term of having to gather signatures on their own.
But he says he's close, right? His campaign says they're close to
Yeah, they said
signatures.
this week that they said they're very close to having the signatures, so we'll see.
Nikki, thank you very much.
A lot of math.
As Emily mentioned, the Republican convention still coming up. It features incumbent Secretary of State Diego Morales and challengers Knox County Clerk David Shelton and conservative activist Jamie Reitnauer, and congressional staffer Max Engling as well. He's jumped in too. That convention is coming up June 19th and 20th up in Fort Wayne, and we'll have coverage both days here on 13 News. Emily, you're going to be there.
I am going to be there, traveling up there next week. So switching gears, Indiana's lieutenant governor is no stranger to controversy.
But this time, clergy members say he's gone too far. Still ahead, how they're responding to his comments about Islam.
Yeah, we've never seen anything like this regarding the low rates of enforcement. It's horrifying, it's inexcusable, and it's frankly a dereliction of duty.
But first, our 13 Investigates team digs into dangerous drops in truck safety enforcement.
Why the federal government says it's holding fewer dangerous trucking companies accountable. It's next.
Welcome back. Our 13 Investigates team is revealing the blind spots in the trucking industry that put you in danger.
13 Investigates and our partner stations found federal enforcement related to serious safety violations is plummeting under the Trump administration. Trucking safety enforcement dropped by more than 80%, both nationwide and here in Indiana. Investigative reporter Sierra Putman found that's important because there's a drop in cases that target unsafe companies and drivers.
Nick Magel lives in his dream home.
All right, buddy, we'll let you out.
There's room for his animals, sweeping views, and lots of love. It's also a short drive from the place that brings back nightmares.
Even today, if we don't turn down our road, we turn a half mile to the east or whatever, we don't turn down that road.
US 50 is off limits after this 2011 crash involving Edward Megel, his wife Joanne, and 6-year-old granddaughter Darcy. Pictures of the crash show the damage to the family's Oldsmobile. Edward and Darcy were injured but walked away. Medics flew Joanne to a Kentucky hospital.
Mom had a lot of internal injuries, maybe all her ribs except one was broke.
13 days later, she died. The driver of the semi told investigators he couldn't stop. The family sued and in court documents accused the owner of C&K Trucking of receiving a warning at 7:30 a.m. that the vehicle had brake problems. That was 12 hours before the crash. The Megel family also claims the originally scheduled truck driver called in to report the problems and refused to drive. In his response, the owner denied the allegations, but confirmed he was behind the wheel during the crash. His attorney argued the crash was the result of a sudden emergency. The Megel family's attorney, David Craig, disagrees.
The reality was it was one of the worst chameleon carriers I've ever seen.
A chameleon or reincarnated carrier is a business that rebrands to hide information like past safety issues. Craig says this 2010 federal form shows the owner of C&K Trucking failed to disclose he also owned Hackney Trucking. Court records show the federal government opened an enforcement case and assessed a fine of nearly $20,000 against Hackney Trucking in 2009 for numerous violations, including failing to inspect and maintain its vehicles. That company shuttered just months before the crash. In its lawsuit, the family accused the owner of shutting down because he was unable to operate safely and could not obtain insurance. The owner denied those allegations, but both sides agree. The two carriers shared the same owner, bank accounts, equipment, trucks, and same business address.
It's not that hard to check that address. Send an inspector out and look and see, is this the same equipment or not?
It's why the Megals are sharing their story. They want more oversight to keep dangerous companies off the road. But 13 Investigates learned enforcement is moving in the opposite direction. With the help of our reporting partners in Florida and Texas, 13 Investigates found in 2024, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration closed 3,800 enforcement cases. Last year, it closed 617 cases. That's an 84% drop nationally. In Indiana, it dropped by 88%.
We've never seen anything like this regarding the low rates of enforcement. It's horrifying, it's inexcusable, and it's frankly a dereliction of duty.
Zach Cahalan with the Truck Safety Coalition says these cases are how the federal government holds the trucking industry accountable. Most of these cases involve truck carriers out of compliance or facing safety violations.
For you to even be touched by an enforcement case, you've done something pretty bad, right?
Our team caught up with FMCSA's administrator, Derek Bars, to ask him about the drop in oversight. An agency insider tells us new legal hurdles are making it harder for regulators to take action against unsafe trucking companies.
Was there something changed in that policy?
Legal sufficiency, making sure that everyone understands that you've got to make sure that you have evidence to be able to bring cases against somebody, no matter whether it's a criminal case or whether it's a regulatory case. You got to have evidence. I think you're going to see an uptick in enforcement cases because my message is enforcement is important.
13 Investigates found federal data shows that uptick hasn't happened yet. So far in 2026, only a few dozen cases are closed each month, compared to hundreds in past years. Both federal and state cases plummeted in 2025 when President Donald Trump took office. Experts worry that puts more families like the Megals at risk of crashes that rarely bring accountability.
Were there any criminal charges brought?
As far as I know, there weren't, and that's not unusual.
The driver received a speeding ticket. Also, the Megals reached a settlement.
Do you think that was enough?
No.
Not enough for the loss of a mother, remembered now with every breeze through these wind chimes.
She was never able to see the kids grow up.
Never saw Darcy grow into a young woman who loves animals.
Keep in mind, these findings run counter to recent calls to improve truck safety by the Trump administration. And experts tell me that reducing oversight just makes it easier for bad actors to fly under the radar.
And that can have deadly consequences.
You know, initial information shows that there were more than 4,000 people killed in crashes with big trucks last year. 100 of those people died here in Indiana.
So over the last year, we've heard a lot about truck safety from state leaders, but primarily in the context of immigrant drivers. Does this have anything to do with that?
You know, potentially. The trucking industry experts that I have spoken with say there is definitely a conversation that needs to be had about some immigrant drivers in foreign-based trucking companies exploiting the loopholes in the system. But they tell me the easiest way to address those problems is by enforcing current rules and regulations and finding ways to eliminate those loopholes.
This whole thing is equal parts heartbreaking and maddening. As somebody who drives the interstates, who has children who drive the interstates, safety is obviously, well, it's about lives, you know, it's about saving lives.
The interstates can be intimidating sometimes.
And that impacts all of us.
Thank you very much for staying on top of it. Still ahead, faith is a common theme in Hoosier politics.
Now a bipartisan group is standing up to defend it.
Hate does not stay in neat little box. It is a wildfire.
Comments by Indiana's lieutenant governor lead people of different faiths and political parties to stand up together and demand change. Next on Crossroads Politics.
Welcome back. This week, an Interfaith coalition gathered at the State House to defend religious freedom.
Yeah, the gathering came after Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith said he loves Muslims, but but hates Islam.
Governor Mike Braun has addressed the lieutenant governor's comments before, saying those are not the words he would have chosen.
But the people who gathered at the State House, some of them faith leaders, some of them lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, are calling on the governor to take a stronger stance against what was said with actions. Faith over fear. That was the message from religious leaders who gathered at the State House Thursday, calling on Hoosiers to support religious freedom for everyone, no matter who or how they worship.
Today we affirm a simple truth. When we protect religious freedom for one community, we strengthen it for every community.
Thursday's speakers did not mention the lieutenant governor by name directly, but referenced recent remarks made about Islam from a top elected official. Earlier this month, the lieutenant governor appeared on a national podcast telling listeners he loved Muslims but hated Islam and that people needed to be okay with hating again.
When a leader uses their platform to declare that a specific faith is incompatible with our state's value, they send a chilling message to every single person in Indiana who prays differently, look differently, or comes from a different cultural background.
The call for religious freedom crossed political lines.
There was an extermination order for my people until 1976.
Conservative Republican and Indiana State Treasurer Daniel Elliott is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
If we start saying it's okay to start hating the Muslim or the Jew or the Hindu or any other faith, then pretty soon we start to say, oh, you know what, you're not the right flavor of Christianity, and it's okay to hate you too.
We will not let the hatred of anyone define us or divide us.
Democratic State Senator Fadi Kadura called on Governor Braun to make clear Indiana serves all faiths and sign an executive order that would provide more education on religious rights through the Indiana Civil Rights Commission.
We asked the governor to publicly respond to this.
Organizers of this week's gathering are hoping that more Hoosiers will reach out to the governor on this. The event came actually with a QR code for people to scan to take them to a petition that they could sign that will then be sent to the governor.
And have you heard from the governor since?
So we reached out to the governor's office. We have not heard back. I also reached out to the lieutenant governor and have not heard back.
Okay, thanks, Emily. And thank you for watching. That does it for this week's episode of Crossroads Politics. I'm Dustin Grove.
And I'm Emily Longnecker. For all of us here at 13 News, thanks for watching.